September, October of 87 was my first kind of venture into the office interiors industry.
Was that the sales job you got fired from, or?
Come on to that. I had 2 consecutive sackings. The key for you to be successful in sales is get everybody on the bus around you, whether they are the most junior or the most senior. The team, we had somebody who could design it, somebody who could sell it, somebody who could build it. That's what you need to be successful in any design and build company. Nigel and James and I met that evening and said, right guys, we're either doing it or we're not, because I've got to do something now. And they said, no, we're doing it. And so 2 months later, Area Squared, as was known then, was born. We didn't have any external backing. We put cash in ourselves. And we used to literally say, if we do a bad job for you, you won't pay us. What we've realised is to grow the group, we needed more brainpower. Every experience that anybody goes through, you have to get a positive from it.
Clive, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
This has been a long-winded intro. I've been trying to get you on for numerous months now. Sorry. Loads of stuff I want to dive into today. Your career, the workplace industry, fit out, all of the above. But let's start back before you got into fit out.
Okay.
Give us an idea of what Clive was like, for school and the following years.
I grew up in High Wycombe in Buckinghamshire. I didn't really enjoy school. And I think that's probably an understatement. I really disliked school. I went to the Royal Grammar School, which is very formal education, and it didn't really suit me. I left when I was 15. I got my O-levels, as we took then in those days. But yeah, my school reports weren't great. My parents were not impressed with me leaving school at that age. And then I went to college and did a diploma in business and finance, which was great actually. And I really enjoyed the difference where you were actually allowed to kind of take responsibility for your own actions rather than go to school where you're just told to turn up and you had to do it. Whereas at college, I always remember in the very first day the kind of tutor, he said, if you don't turn up to 90% of the lessons, you'll fail. If you don't hand your work in on time, I just won't mark it. You'll fail. So it's down to you guys. If you don't want to come, don't come. Whereas obviously more formal education, you have to turn up, and actually putting that kind of responsibility back in the hands of myself and all my fellow students really worked for me. And we were able to, as a class, rearrange the timetable. So we only had to go in for 3 days a week, not 5. So all my friends from school were still going in 5 days a week. We'd go to college 3 days a week. And at the same time, then I was able to work. So I actually have never not worked. My first job was when I was 13. I was a paper boy.
Classic.
And sold, classic. £3 a week.
So I like
that's.
That is some harsh labour.
yeah. So that was age 13 as a paper boy, and then did various other jobs. Sold lottery tickets, worked at National Trust, and then eventually Saturday only in Marks and Spencer's. And then when we kind of changed the timetable, I was able to work at least 2 full days a week at M&S, and so I was earning reasonably good money for at that age and getting an education.
So you worked from, sounds like you worked from young. Also, the grammar school, because I also went to grammar school as well. Was it a single sex? Or it was
1,200 boys.
Yeah, so very similar to me, and I struggled, to be honest with you. So we got dubbed as one of the naughtiest years because I had a load of. So I also always played football when I was younger, and I had a lot of my football friends also went there. Yeah. So we had a group of about 10 of us, and as in like close friends. But there was also other people as well that are relatively naughty, and I think it's very difficult to tame a group of young boys in a school where it's just boys as well, so they just play up. I actually struggled at school in terms of academically because of that reason, because like, I just I saw a different type of school that was just to muck around with your friends, like just as you do. So I struggled. I don't know how you found it.
Well, I think grammar school when I went to it, which was the very early 80s, is very different now. My son is 18 and just about to leave a school which was single sex until sixth form, so for the first 4 or 5 years his was single sex, and now actually the school is transitioning to a co-ed school, because I think there is a lot of studies been done about the benefits of co-education, and coincidentally, my wife and I, we sent my daughter to a co-ed school because we particularly thought that would be beneficial to her. But going back to kind of my story, when we started at the school, we got a kind of an introductory book, and I always remember this, and I've actually shown it to my kids. It said, prefects are no longer allowed to administer corporal punishment to the pupils. That has to be the remit of the teachers. So when I was at school, there was still the cane, and it had only just stopped being where the prefects could administer it. So the school was opened by Queen Elizabeth I, and then it's very old kind of ethics in the school. But we had to learn Latin. I mean, it's crazy to be saying this now, but it just wasn't the place for me, and I don't think it would have made any difference if there was girls there or not. It just wasn't that the right place. It was too autocratic, and wasn't for me. I from a very young age, as I said, I worked. I wanted things. My parents didn't really have any money. I always remember the first thing I wanted was a record player. I wanted to play Parallel Lines by Blondie on a record player, and so I worked to buy a record player, a stereo.
Interesting.
And I'm still, I'm very proud that I had that, relatively young age.
Yeah.
But whereas now children today, it's so different.
I'm going to be an embarrassment. I've never heard that song.
And well, that's the name of an album.
Oh, that's how.
Yeah. But people of a certain generation will know the album Parallel Lines.
No worries. So you studied at college in business and economics.
Yeah.
So how did your career progress after college?
So when I left college, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So I actually went full-time at Marks and Spencer's in just kind of a holding pattern. And actually, coincidentally, a guy who worked with me in menswear in High Wycombe, a guy called Nigel Boreham, and Nigel's gone on to have a fantastic career in our industry as well. Purely coincidental there, but there was somebody else, very close to me who's also done, had an amazing business from Marks and Spencer's Saturday work. And then I thought I actually like analysis, I like statistics, I like numbers. So I got a job as a statistics clerk at G-Plan Furniture, again, business you probably wouldn't have heard of. And then I thought I'll actually take that on and become an accountant. So my original plan in my career was to become an accountant. So I became a trainee accountant, and the first thing that I got to do in that role was to go on audit. So you basically go out with one of the partners or one of the senior managers, and in those days, no computers. You got given the ledger of the company who you were auditing, and they would give you basically look at it, and you type in every number into the calculator with the spool of paper, and then you would literally tick off number after number after number, and that was it, to check the totals matched. So an incredibly unstimulating role.
To say the least.
To say the least. And so I've been doing that job for about 3 months, and I hadn't started the formal training. Formal training was due to start in September, but I hated it. I mean, I really, really didn't like it. And so a mate and I, we were going to Benidorm on an 1830 holiday. And so we went, and we had fantastic time.
I'm sure you did.
And we decided there and then that we would hand our notice in from our respective jobs, and we would stay in Spain for the summer. So this is back in 1987, before you were born, obviously. And so I phoned my mum and told her that I was going to leave my trainee accountant role and work in Spain for the summer. So she was suitably unimpressed. But there was no mobile phones in those days, so it was literally put the money in the meter or in the phone box. And then, so we spent the summer in Spain. We got the bus from Alicante down to a place called Fuengirola on the Costa del Sol, and we spent the summer there working in the bars, doing a bit of timeshare touting, doing some gardening, selling ice creams, just had a fantastic time. And several friends from home came over and joined us. So we spent all the way through to the end of the summer of 87, had the time of our lives. And I think it was great because obviously I hadn't gone to university, hadn't had that experience of moving away from home, only really knew the area that I'd lived in pretty much all my life. And so that was a complete eye-opener and, fantastic, time of our lives.
Yeah, I bet. Also as a cultural experience as well. Like imagine that. Well, I say imagine, but the cultural difference between living here and even just living in Spain. I know it's not too far away.
It wasn't culturally that different. You can imagine. Well, Costa del Sol in the 80s, it was. There's a lot of bars where you have your pint of lager with your English fried breakfast. Not that that's my thing, but it wasn't the most culturally challenging place to be.
Maybe the angle of maybe just living on your own and being elsewhere, like you said, leaving your hometown as such.
Yeah.
Having to fend for yourself and being accountable just to yourself and only having yourself to rely on.
Yeah.
That was probably a bit of a game changer in terms of life experience for you, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think every every experience that anybody goes through, you have to get a positive from it. But definitely going from living at home, only ever having lived at home, to going living abroad, and there was 7 lads all finding different jobs to do to pay our rent and buy our food, and there was no backstop. My mum was not sending me any money out, even if she'd have had it. That wasn't going to happen, so we had to work.
Really had to fend for yourselves.
Yeah.
So how did that come to an end, and how did your career progress from there?
The summer ended.
Yeah, true. You had to come home.
Yeah, I had to. And so I came back, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I instinctively felt a calling more towards a sales kind of a role, rather than going back into a numerical kind of career, anything to do with the accountancy side. I parked that. So I actually had 2 job offers, and one of them was both in telesales. So I decided I was going to try and get a role in telemarketing. And I looked around and saw lots of opportunities, but was given 2 offers. One of which was for an IT company selling some sort of software, and one was in office interiors. And I only took the decision to go into office interiors because that company was literally based a mile from my house, and I just thought, right, I'll just go into that. I didn't even know the industry existed. I had no knowledge at all. And
interesting.
And so that was at sort of the September, October of '87 was my first kind of venture into the kind of the office interiors industry.
And was that the sales job you got fired from, or?
Come on to that.
No, I mean to throw you under a bus, but
no. As you can, no.
Just a short break from the episode, which I really hope you guys are enjoying. This podcast has been invaluable for me, and I hope it's providing a lot of value for yourselves. If you could just do me one small favor and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform. Not only does it help me and the podcast, but it also helps share stories and insights from the industry that we find ourselves in. I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. But yeah, how did that, that's your initial exposure to the fit out industry, and you've had an illustrious career since then. So how did it progress from there and going on?
The company was run by 2 guys, a guy called Gary Saunders, another one called Perry Mills, and they subsequently split their business. They're obviously a lot older than me, split their business and gone their own separate ways. But very interestingly, both of their sons have taken on and run fit out businesses. So it was a very small company, but really a really good company called GP Management Services. Was a really good place to learn, and I literally the first day we went in, I started at the same time as another guy, and the boss Gary said, right, here's the phone book, you start at A, you start at Z, and just start calling one forwards, one backwards, and you just got to book appointments for businesses who are moving offices. That's it. And I had no training in telesales. We didn't have a database. You had to write notes down on pieces of paper, on cards, and give them to somebody in the admin team, and they would eventually type them up, so there was a record. But yeah, literally day one, I had no idea what to do, and just picked the phone up and started from there. And then now today you see, obviously, it's very much more sophisticated sales process. But I started off on the phones. But
there's probably a skill set that you learn in that maybe modern day people don't learn as such, because there's so many different sources to get in leads and clients and client acquisition that a lot of people, even of my age, we don't just pick up the phone and call someone directly and take that route. It's more online, and who can we reach online and message them. So there's probably a skill set not only in the sales but in the communication element as well.
So 4 days a week it was on the phone. And then 1 day a week, we had different territories, and we were told to go out to that territory. And so, in my area was kind of Berkshire, Surrey. you might go to Reading for the day and go around the marketing suites and meet the people in the marketing suites who are hosting visits and viewings, maybe meet some agents, literally look at name boards and get the local paper, see which companies were expanding. There was no internet, so you had to do your own research and build your own network.
Interesting. It's just because, like I said, for me, it's because I've grown up in an era where I can find out about anyone at any time just by going on my phone and going on LinkedIn or going on whatever it is. Yeah. So just the skill set itself acquired in that process, has probably helped you as you've gone on. Yeah. So how did that role progress, end, or?
So I really enjoyed my time there, and I think I was with the guys for about 18 months and started off in, as I call it, a telemarketing background, and then we were then supporting the guys who ran it and going out on appointments, and then very soon going out on small opportunities, £50,000, £100,000 projects, and trying to secure those for yourself. So just gradually building up, and then I wanted to buy my own flat, and my salary, it was £4,000 a year. But we also got commission, and I was earning over, I think, about £16,000 a year, which is still, not a huge amount of money now. But then it was very reasonable. But to get a mortgage, you needed a bigger basic salary. The commission didn't count, and they were very geared towards commission, not basic salary. So I wanted to get a role which paid me more as a starting point, because I needed it. And so I went and got a job at a company called Parcel Line, which has nothing to do with office interiors, basically a parcel delivery service company. I mean, it's dreadful. I mean, nothing wrong with the parcel delivery service. The job I took was dreadful. From the minute I started, the minute I realised that I didn't enjoy it. I was there maybe 6 months, but it had served its purpose. I got my mortgage, got my flat. Yep. I went back into, I wanted to go back into office interiors. I had a couple of interviews and was unsuccessful, and then I got a role at a ceiling distribution company, so kind of linked to the industry, but more from a supply chain point of view. And again, that wasn't the right fit for me. And this is the role that we're talking about, where I got sacked, for want of a better term. My passion beyond anything to do with home or anything like that is West Ham.
Oh, so, big West Ham fan. I am. Not so great at the moment, is it?
It has been a lot worse in the past, let me tell you. So I used to go, pretty much every game, and we had a match on a Monday night away to Liverpool, and I asked for the afternoon off to go, and my boss wouldn't give me the time off, and that pissed me off. And I wanted to go. So we went to the match, but I thought I need to come up with a suitable excuse as to why I wouldn't be in work, and so I said that I've been in a car crash, so I wouldn't be in for a few days. And I'm thinking, I'm going to have to fake this. I'm really going to have to fake it. This sounds dreadful, doesn't it? I'm aware of this.
You said it's a suitable excuse.
So I went to a pharmacy and bought a collar to go into the office when I went in on the Wednesday to say I got whiplash, and I did, and I went in there. But what I'd done totally ridiculously is I'd done a drive-by to the office on the Monday because I needed to collect something, and I'd hoped no one had seen me, and I was caught on the CCTV
with no collar
being
on.
In the office and on the way to the match with my mates in the car. So when I went back in the office, I got called in, and he asked me, had I gone to the game, and blah blah, and I confessed. And
it's good improvisation though.
And so I didn't stay there for long. So I was out that day. So when people say they've been sacked for well, I think anybody in sales, if you haven't been sacked, I question.
Yeah.
And in those days, you didn't get made redundant; you did get sacked. And so that
was the end of that one.
That was the end of that one. But
Interesting. So how did so you've that's a small exposure from a supply chain perspective as well. So you're already, from that point, you've worked in office interiors, you've done sales, you've done almost like cold calling and trying to find your own leads, and you've then worked in a little bit of supply chain. So you're already creating a bit of a foundation for what's stemmed to be the rest of your career. So what happened after that?
So I think at that point, I had no idea that I was going to stay in office interiors. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I mean, I think I was barely 21 at this point. I might have been 21. So, you put that into context now, it's still very, very, very young. But I felt the first role I'd had where I was talking to end user clients, where I much preferred that than the supply chain side of things, with the more technical sale. I didn't really enjoy that quite so much. And so I thought, again, which way is my career going to go? I bounced into another poor decision of a role, stayed there 4 or 5 months, sold absolutely nothing, and got sacked from that. So I had two
couple of back-to-back sackings,
two consecutive sackings, which is not great actually. I think probably the next role was going to be absolutely crucial. And I went to a company called Fourwell Design, and Fourwell are no longer trading. They'd floated, so that I think they're one of the first floated businesses in the interiors industry. And I realised that I had to really make this work, and I was incredibly fortunate to join a company that was very city focused. We'd just coming through the upturn of the Thatcher government, sort of the late 80s, and really see the stock markets boom, and there was a lot of money in the economy, and design and build, which is ultimately where I've ended up, which is what Fourwell was filling a massive expansion in the market, where people wanted to get into buildings quicker, wanted to have projects turn around much quicker, and there was very little competition in those days in the design and build world. And I went to Fourwell and loved it. From the minute I got there, I really enjoyed it, and they were they paid very well, but they also did a brilliant incentive scheme, which again today just wouldn't work, but it did then. If you sold £1 million project, you got a Porsche. I mean, that was, and at sort of 21, I just thought, oh my God, I can have a Porsche. And incredibly, I managed to sell a project within 4 months of joining that company of £1.2 million.
So you got yourself a Porsche.
I got told I was going to get a Porsche.
No.
and at the time, so we're probably around 1990, something like that now, the business started to not do so well, had overstretched itself, taken its eye off the ball, and was leaking money, and then was bringing in lots of new policies and lots of new strategies to kind of save that. And one of the things they brought in was they were no longer going to do the £1 million Porsche deal.
Oh no!
But I'd sold that deal, and I had told my girlfriend and I told my friends I was getting a Porsche, and I then got told I wasn't getting it. So I was very unhappy. I was extremely unhappy, and so unhappy that I thought, right, I'm just going to finish. I'm going to get all my commission on these projects that I had, and then I'm going to leave. And that's exactly what I did. The day my final commission check cleared, I left, and I had another job lined up. And it always sort of stuck with me that if you say to somebody, doesn't matter what grade they are, what level they are, and you actually say, if you do X, I will do Y.
Yeah.
That's been so important to me.
Stick to it.
Absolutely.
Do what you say you're going to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And likewise, if you don't do this, I will do that. So, never afraid to make harsh decisions if people aren't achieving what they should do.
Do you think that's changed as the modern generation has come through, just in terms of like doing what you say you're going to do? Because I've had a couple of discussions with people who are in their 50s or 60s, and they say that the modern generation that have come through, they actually lack the ability to just stick to a time to be somewhere, or stick to a plan, or just actually do what they say they're going to do.
Yeah, I think that accountability is so important, and I think that I don't want to sound like somebody who says it was better then, because actually life wasn't better then, it was just different. And we all have our own personal experience of our childhood, of our teenage years, our early adulthood. Everyone's is different, and it's right at the time. But I do think that people find it so difficult to hold people to account. And I think that in some respects, legislation hasn't made it easy for employers to hold people to account. I think that by the same token, some employers used to abuse that opportunity to simply just get rid of people for the wrong reasons. So I think there has to be a fine balance. But definitely, I think that that you should be held to account yourself. I've been held to account for my actions, good, bad, or indifferent, and I think that that's a quality which that more people could have.
Yeah, sure. So obviously that role as such ended through not being able to get your Porsche.
Well, it was a point of principle, really. I enjoyed the company, but I just kind of felt that it was so black and white. It wasn't if you do well, and the well was not defined. It was if you sell £1 million project, you get a Porsche.
Well, being on the unfortunate end of that, it's probably grown this like this character trait in you, where doing what you say you're going to do, and I imagine you've carried that through in your business career with people who've worked with you as well. So how quickly did you go from sort of that role into your start area, which is Fourfront Group?
So I mean, one of the most important parts of my career was the next role, where I joined Maris in 1991. So Maris of 91 is very different to Maris today. I think the biggest difference was at the time it was owned and run by Chris Downs, who was the founder of the business, based in Hampshire, in Church Crookham. They were a company that I wanted to go and work for, and were certainly an up-and-coming business, and created something. There was a creation of in that business there in the early 90s, which went on to spawn lots of other businesses, lots of hugely successful people, highly talented people were in that business at that time. I felt actually that was where I wanted to go and work, and I kind of made it my mission to go and work there. So I joined there as they had different terminologies, but probably the best description was as junior salesman. And I worked there for 6 years, going from, like I say, junior salesperson all the way through to having a big territory, being responsible for a lot of people, met lots of great people, and was very successful, and really enjoyed that. And spending time with Chris, as I say, he's no longer with us. He passed away a few years ago. He was probably the most influential person on my career, because I'd bounced several jobs. Staying 6 years in one place at that age was exactly what I needed to do. My CV couldn't have stood, this constant kind of changing around. And I knew I had to kind of embed myself in a business, and that's what I chose to do.
Is there anything specific that Chris actually kind of taught you or instilled into you specifically about our industry as well?
Well, he taught me lots of things, some good, some bad. But for me, I mean, everybody has a different experience of everybody. For me, Chris was a brilliant people person. He told me lots of things, and he did he mentored me for a number of years. But he was very good at explaining how you need to be able to manage up and manage down. Most people can kind of manage up, you get on with your boss. That's kind of, and we all see it in companies where people are very overt. But he said really the key for you to be successful in sales is get everybody on the bus around you, whether they are the most junior or the most senior. You have to be able to do that, and therefore how you talk to people, how you deal with people, even to the point where what your desk is like in those days. You used to have your own personal desk, but at the same time you've got to retain your own personality. You can't be you can't be the same as everybody else. But so he helped me focus a lot on the people relationship side, because I kind of had this numerical background going back to my accountancy days. at that time in our industry, not only did we have to find the leads, but we used to have to cost the projects ourselves. So there was no such thing as pre-con. We have to go and cost a project, and I found that quite easy, which not many salespeople were able to do, because it's not necessarily easy. But yeah, I worked with Chris. We worked together on several projects, and I would kind of be his lackey, but I'd do all the costing work, and he'd show me how to do takeoffs and all this sort of thing, which again, sales guys don't always learn how to do.
What a grounding as well, just for the industry, and as a salesman as well, what a grounding. But just as a raw understanding about our industry as such, covering takeoffs to costings to relationship management to sales. It's obviously set you in good stead for. So it sounds like he taught you quite a lot.
Well, he did, and the other thing which I didn't touch on, the role was commission only. Now, the thought of anybody being paid commission only today, it just doesn't happen. But if you sold, and you sold well, it could be very financially rewarding. So again, this message of get everybody working together, everybody's helping you. It did create a culture of, well, the sales guys, you had to win. You just had to win. So it was a very aggressive sales force, challenging other businesses in the industry. So, not win at all costs, but there was definitely a winning mentality there. We
need competition just in life anyway, because unfortunately how it is if with a lot of people is everyone is kind of here out for themselves to an extent. I know people help people along the way, but ultimately everybody's first instinct is to look after their own their own families, and they need to progress themselves. So being able to have a healthy competitive advantage is such as the gentleman Chris taught you, just in terms of, and also as well, something to touch on as well, is it sounds like he instilled quite really good leadership qualities in terms of cultivating a team and getting a team to work towards one goal.
Absolutely,
because that's difficult to just understand different types of personalities and try and generate a team together who can go towards one direction and one goal. So that's, again, it's probably set you in good stead for when you became the directors and the CEOs of the companies which we'll go on to cultivate a team around you, and then go towards in one avenue and towards one goal. So it sounds like you learned a lot from him.
I think when you're in your early to mid 20s, they are really learning years. And I'm sure we'll come on to almost like society at the moment, where people don't have to be in the office. That's a different thing. But for me, those years in the early 90s were absolutely pivotal, and it was spending time next to people who were more successful, more experienced, knew a lot more than me. I just was a sponge.
Interesting, because a lot of people, sorry to interrupt there, Clive, but if you are around people who, and this I suppose is personality dependent, but if you are around people who know a lot more than you, who can teach you a little bit, a lot of people's egos get in the way of being a sponge. They don't want to look like they don't know, so they will put a barrier up towards from the learning perspective. So they won't absorb. They'll almost challenge it rather than actually realise, do you know what, I don't know, I'm going to absorb the information. So I find a lot of some people do, to an extent nowadays. I'm sure they did as well. When you were sort of back then in your 20s. So 6-year career?
I was 6 years there.
And then
at the end of 97, I was given an opportunity to go to a company called MJF in Uxbridge to run their fit-out team, be jointly responsible for running their fit-out team. And very quickly I took the opportunity. It seemed like the next step of, I'd been successful at Maris, junior sales all the way through. The next part of my journey was then to look at maybe running a business. I kind of thought I might want to run my own business, but I was not 100% sure. So the opportunity of running a business for somebody else was kind of the next best thing. And so I went to MJF and very quickly realised that the team that were there were just not capable of doing the type of work that I wanted us to do, that we needed to do. And so I went back to 2 previous colleagues to come and join us. First was Nigel Hudson. Nigel had delivered projects with me at Maris and was also ready to take that next step in his career. And then I went back to James Cornwall, who was with me at Forwell. James was ready to take that leap from a design perspective. So it was a 3, and then there was another guy as well, Peter. But the team, we had somebody who could design it, somebody who could sell it, somebody who could build it, and that's what you need to be successful in any design and build company.
Yeah.
So we went there, and we very quickly, the MJF is Irish parentage. Very quickly realised that it wasn't a great fit culturally. And so we'd been there about 18, 20 months, and we decided we would try and buy the business. We thought, let's try and buy this team. We'd created a team of maybe 10 or 12 people, and we thought we can do more. So we then approached the board to say we'd like to buy it. They said it wasn't for sale. So we then went back again a little bit later, a month or two later, and said, no, we really do want to buy it. And they said, no, you didn't hear us, it's not for sale. So we're thinking, oh, right, okay. And then we kind of talked about, should we go off? I mean, we're either going to do it or we're not going to do it. We've got to put up or shut up. And then I was called into a budget meeting. It was in November of 1999. I was going in to do the budgets for the following year. And I was then sacked for the 3rd time in my career. So I went in, and it was told because I'd been trying to lead a buyout of a subsidiary business, and it wasn't strategy for the group, and not only tried once, tried twice. Yeah. It's clearly something that I was keen on doing. They didn't feel they could have an MD of a business who didn't really share their goals, and I totally understand that, to fully understand that. And so it was time for me to go. And so I literally left that meeting. Nigel and James and I met that evening and said, right, guys, we're either doing it or we're not, because I've got to do something now. Yeah. And they said, no, we're doing it. And they were on 2 months' notice. And so 2 months later, which was which took us to 10th of January, year 2000. Yeah. Area Squared, as was known then, was born. So that's where kind of came from this constant kind of moving on and never standing still. But, the key there was, I'd worked with James and Nigel for a number of years, we both as employees, and then, always as employees, but running a business, working in businesses. We had a lot of mutual trust. We knew what we needed to do to make a business successful. And at that time in our lives, we just thought, right, let's go for it.
And that's the start of Area.
It is Area Squared. It was called then. Sorry. I know it's very much Area now, but back in the day, it was Area Squared.
So it sounds like you had a good team, let's say a team, but like business partners around you to start Area. Yep. and like drive it forward. So how did the first? Let's look at the first maybe like five years of Area, because you've gone from was it 3 of you or 3 or 4 of you to start with?
So day one there was the 3 of us, myself, Nigel and James. We also had 3 colleagues join us, one in administration, one in telemarketing, and then another project director. Yeah. So we knew to be successful, we had to get on the proverbial phones and really pound the streets and win work quickly, because we didn't have any external backing. We put our houses on the line. We put cash in ourselves. Yeah. I don't know where Nigel and James got their proportion of the cash from, but we put money in the business, and we had 3 other salaries to pay. We had 3 mortgages to pay, and of course, when you're a brand new company, you're there to be shot at. Yeah. So we developed a kind of a sales approach where when we would see clients, we knew that our competition would say, they're a new business, they're going to fold, they've got no back. There's nothing there. Yeah. And we knew that would be the message. And what actually, we're very resilient people, and also very good at our roles at that time, certainly. And we used to literally say, if we do a bad job for you, you won't pay us. We know that. If you don't pay us, I'll lose my house. And that's the truth. That wasn't invented. That was the truth. Yeah. If we lost money as a business, I couldn't pay my mortgage, I would lose my house. There was no backstop. My family have no money. Same was certainly true of to a degree of the other guys.
And I suppose if you're a client hearing that, you're thinking, he has to do a good job.
Well,
he doesn't actually have an option.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
You know, and so we used to say that, and it wasn't, you know, the number one sales approach, but we made sure that the person who was making the decision, ultimate decision, heard that message.
Yeah.
Because it was true. And if they decided not to work with us, then that's absolutely fine. But what they wouldn't do is they wouldn't uncover something later where we'd misrepresented or anything like that. We would, you know, straight at the beginning say this was our approach.
So what did projects look like then, as such, in the first 5 years?
So we signed our first project literally within a week of starting the business, and that was £350,000. So that was a
quite a big project.
Big project.
For then, yeah.
This is going back a long time, 25 years. We won our first 5 projects, 5 on the trot, which was great. We decided we were going to really specialise on the design and build industry in the Thames Valley.
Yep.
We had a vision that said, if we could get to a £15 million business in the Thames Valley, we will be one of the leaders in that
Yep.
area. And we didn't really see much further beyond that. We thought if we can get to that, then that would be amazing. And we started winning work very quickly, which meant we could invest some money in the business, and people joined us from very early on. Mostly ex-colleagues, but we also had other people come and join us. And I think there's nothing like a new business. There's just something which you're creating something together. You're not joining something which is already flowing. Everybody had such a massive role to play in it. You know, there was literally, you'd have to unplug the kettle to plug the printer in.
Yeah.
Things like that. That's genuinely what it was like. And to some degrees, they're probably the most rewarding, happiest times of my career. Well, definitely the hardest working. I mean, it was absolutely, 12-hour days, 5 days a week, plus a lot of time at the weekend as a minimum. But we were being successful. We were winning work. We were doing a good job. We were getting a good name for ourselves, and very quickly, the competition didn't like us. So that's a good sign if you're doing something right, that the competition don't like you. But we, very early on, we had some big obstacles to overcome, and probably one of the biggest in the history of our business was 9/11. That happened. We'd only been going 20 months when 9/11 happened, and obviously, it's a global tragedy what happened. But from a fit-out perspective, so much of the money that flows into the fit-out world comes from America, starts from America, and literally America turned off the taps, and that was it. There was nothing happening, and we had so many projects cancelled, put on hold, and we really struggled. And so for 6 months, we were literally going into the reserves, and we'd only been going 20 months, so there wasn't many reserves there. And I was due to get married in the March of 2002, and we were talking about redundancies and how we're going to get through it. And we'd agreed that we'd wait till I came back from my honeymoon. But a few weeks before I was getting married, we were on a stag do. Went my stag do to Barcelona. Yep. Nigel was there as well. So some of the other guys. Things had turned around. The industry was starting to come back. You could start to feel that things had smoothed out. And literally, we got off the plane in Barcelona, and we had a message from the office to say 2 clients had called that morning to say projects that had been on hold and suspended were back on that day.
Fantastic.
And you just thought, right, okay, we're ready to go again, and then we were able to kick on from there.
Yep.
So the first 5 years, we really did establish ourselves as one of the main players in the Thames Valley. We also were already thinking, how can we grow this? How can we move forward? Design and build really in the early 2000s was focused really just on the end user market. Project managers external consultants didn't like that procurement route, didn't really want to get involved in it, would try and discourage clients to a degree to go into a different route, the more traditional route.
Why do you think they? Why do? I suppose it puts them out of work to an extent, but also like why do you think they try to steer clients away from just direct to end user from the D&B company?
Well, I think there's some reasons which have got merit, and there are reasons which they're vested in.
Yeah.
You know, they get a bigger fee or got
Fine.
a bigger fee. I think at the time, design in the design and build world wasn't anywhere near as good as the design is today. I think design in design and build or in traditional, very little to choose between it.
Yeah.
I think that you see some exceptional creatives in the design and build industry. I think certainly in towards the end of the 20th century, that wasn't the case. So when we started, it was quite easy for a client to be told by an external third party that you need your design guardian. And once you start with an external designer, design and build doesn't work because you then need a contractor, and so you that's where I think it came from. There was also, in my opinion, the professional industry. They kind of gone through a process where they believed that the traditional procurement route was the best and would try to promote that. I think now it's very, very different. I think now design and build is acknowledged as, without question, got its rightful place in the market, as has traditional. Yeah. But going back to those earlier years, we were finding information that we could do nothing with. We would find an opportunity, but they would say, we've already got this architectural practice or design practice. We just want a contractor. So we're thinking, well, if we start a contracting company as well, we can have a design and build business who can win this part of the market, and we can have a contracting company that can win other projects. And so we started a company called City Squared. So we had Area Squared and we had City Squared. And I think that what we did very quickly, City Squared started winning some projects, but we were far too new as a business to cope with having two businesses, trying to juggle two businesses. It was really a mistake, and a cultural mistake as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask that actually, because that must have been difficult to divide the pair of them as such, because they're both, like got their own expertise and their own avenues as such and direction. Yeah. So like there must have been a cultural collide somewhere along the line.
I think what we really did was all of the Area Squared team, myself included, stayed in Area Squared. We helped, through the money that we'd raised, finance the birth of City Squared, but they were over there and we were over here. And whilst we myself, Nigel and James, had shares over there, there was no integration. It was two separate businesses, and we just couldn't. It was too soon. It wasn't an expensive mistake. It actually was just a mistake. But the guys who ran City Squared, really good guys, absolutely were really good. And within a year or so, we'd agreed that they would buy themselves out to just cover the cost of our investment that we'd originally put in. So
it worked well, though.
It worked well for everybody. Yeah. But again, there was always this thing. Nigel was definitely the rocket fuel of we can't stand still. If we stand still, we go backwards. We've got to keep pushing forward. We've got to invest money that we make back into the business, as well as obviously paying ourselves. But you've got to recruit people. You've got to grow. You've got to improve your office. So we moved offices a few times as we grew. We were able to take on larger projects. And
you need someone like that, didn't you? But behind the scenes as such to drive it, because I suppose it could be quite easy to stagnate as such if something's working, then you just repeat it and repeat it, and if you're operating well and you're turning a profit, it's easy to just stay in that direction and stay like that. So you do need someone to be pushing them behind to look, we need to develop, because if we're stagnating here in 5 years time, we're going to be behind the guys. And I suppose you guys, as we're talking now in that current conversation, you weren't brand new, but you were still relatively new compared to the competitors you had. And I suppose there's a driving force in your mind thinking like if they're developing, we need to be ahead of them to stand any chance.
Well, I think what we have between, in those days, myself, Nigel and James, you had lots of bases covered by different motivation and different approaches, and I was probably somewhere in between Nigel and James in terms of how fast to push the business, and being kind of the salesperson, I was touching all parts of the business, but definitely as a team of three, it was very strong. But we realised from what happened with City Squared, if we wanted to grow, we couldn't grow just as a three. We needed to bring more people on board who could really help us. So we'd already made that decision very early on, where we would bring on board a non-exec. So we had a non-exec come on board, a guy called Ross Wilson, who unfortunately is no longer with us. And Ross was brilliant in helping us have formal board meetings, have holding each person to account. All three of us would have to produce a board report every month.
Yeah.
Even though I shared an office with Nigel,
Yeah.
and we were a small business, we would produce this report. We would be held to account, making sure the finances were looked after. I mean, absolutely religiously on top of the finances, and at the same time still doing good work. So we were taught really the good lessons of running a business. We knew how to win projects. We knew how to run projects for clients. We didn't know necessarily too much about running a business, but Ross kind of helped us hugely with that. And that, once we decided we were going to again move forward, we're now probably about 2005. We're probably turning over in the region of 15-20 million. So we'd
hit
grown.
the goal.
Yeah, we
The
had
15 million.
Yeah,
goal
yeah,
that you guys had.
and we didn't see any sign of stopping then.
Yeah.
I mean, we just did. I mean, that thought of stopping then was nowhere there. We still felt this kind of concept of having designer, build and traditional under the same roof, there was merit in it. And so we decided we would go again. But before we would go again, we knew that we needed more brain power at the top of the business to help support us. And that's when Aki Stamatis joined us. So Aki actually was my old boss at Maris in the 90s. A great guy, very, very thoughtful, complemented actually everything that myself, Nigel and James did, and would add something that none of us had. And his mandate to join us was not to really get too involved in area, but to grow us from area to a group. So that was it, because we didn't really need any help in area because that was going well.
Yep.
But what we'd realised is to grow the group, we needed more brain power. So that was the mandate to Aki: come and join us, but take us from being a standalone business to being a group and be the kind of the strategist there. So that was his role. We'd already decided that we would definitely go back in and get have a traditional business, and so we launched Cube Interior Solutions, I should say. So again, you had this area squared complementing with Cube Interior Solutions. And so the next parts that we decided that we would have to grow would be a furniture business. So Sketch Studios with us. And then we also started what we thought would be a design house in 360 Design Studios. So in our mind, we had area, squared, design and build. We had 360 who could design projects. We had Cube that could build projects, and we had Sketch that could furnish projects. So we had 4 businesses that were all independently going to be successful. Some would work together, work within each other, and then we put them all under the umbrella of Fourfront.
So how did you, sorry to interrupt then, so there's 4 businesses which you obviously played a role in, although the 3 others had their own leaders to drive it forward. Did you stay in Area Squared?
So
working in Area Squared, sorry.
No. So when that creation all came about, it was clear that we needed to also have a different process in place for Area Squared. So the idea would be that I would become the CEO of Fourfront, and then we would appoint new MDs in Area Squared. At the same time, we decided that we would have a London business as well. So we opened a London office for Area Squared, and we would have the regional business. So Gary Chandler was, we recruited Gary. He decided to join us from a competitor. Conversations I had with him from day one, we knew where this journey was going. We'd said to Gary, if you can achieve this, and not just numerical achievement, but become the person you need to be to lead it, which he did, absolutely resoundingly successful. He then took over the role of managing director of Area Squared Regions, and we had in London a guy called Rob, a guy called Oliver, and they took on a role of joint managing director in London. After a period of time, Rob left, wasn't quite for him. Oliver then carried on and developed that business, and then over a period of time, Oliver went into a different role, and Sean Davis joined us to head up the London business. So at a point in time, we had 5 MDs, 2 in Area Squared, Cube, Sketch, 360, and myself as the CEO in Fourfront.
So how did you, as personally yourself, as an entrepreneur and a leader, how did you, I know you've obviously hired, back then you hired the individual people to help you, but like how did you cope with all of that? Because, you know, with 4 businesses, 5 MDs, you know, there's a lot to try and keep a grasp on as such. I know you're looking at it from a holistic perspective as a CEO, but like how did you cope with all of that?
Well, probably that the guys would tell you whether I coped well or not, but I loved it. I mean, I absolutely loved the role of being CEO of Fourfront. It was a business which we'd given birth to and was on such an upward trajectory. I felt actually, as I became more experienced, that I was capable of doing the job, and I enjoyed the job, and I thought I did a good job. My kind of way of ensuring I would do a good job was I would read everything. You know, if an email came, I mean, even today, I don't like any unread, unopened emails in my inbox. So I read everything. I make notes. When I was preparing for the guys' board meetings, I would ensure that I was prepared for their board meetings, know what was going on in their business. I'm actually interested in them as well, so I would find time to be able to talk to each of them individually. Some obviously have better relationships with than others, but no, I mean, I felt it was okay. I had good people doing a good job, and I think the difficulty would have been if the 5 guys there weren't able to run their teams. That would be hard. And at times, you know, we not all 5 were super profitable at any one time. You had the peaks and troughs, but at no time did we have 5 not succeeding or 5 bursting through. And then we obviously had Aki, who was there in a role to help nurture that as well. Nigel's role was group wide as well, so you know there was support all around me.
You had good people in place.
Absolutely.
Something to be said about not, you know, like you are nothing without the people within your business. Are you happy to touch on some highs and lows throughout your area career? Because you know, I'm sure there's tons of highs and I'm sure there's tons of lows as well. You know, it's not all plain sailing in business. So are you able to give us some of those highs and lows?
Well, I think my I'll start with the lows
because then it's up from there.
Well, I think so. I mean, I think it's actually really interesting when we talk about highs and lows, and I think that everybody who's run a business has almost certainly got stories of their highs and lows. But actually, it isn't people who just run their business; it's everybody. Everybody in the world, I think, has highs and lows. Some people's are more public than others, and I think that's where, for me, my low points, some have been ones that we've been able to control, so self-inflicted, and some are not. So the hardest part for me was when 9/11 happened. That was horrendous. You know, we something was taken out of our control. We had no way of controlling that. We then had the banks crashing in 08, 09. That was, you know, incredibly difficult. And then more latterly, there's been COVID. So everybody in our industry and everybody in society has felt that to some degree. So those issues that were presented there, where, you know, literally in some cases recession, some kind of working from home, very, very difficult for us to deal with. For me personally, then we have the situation where we had the CMA investigation, where there was only one way I can personally deal with that, and that was to acknowledge my part in it. Absolutely, I was in the wrong. What I did was wrong. It cost me personally a lot of money, and it cost me a large part of my career. Am I sorry? Absolutely, I am. And explaining that to my children has been very, very, you know, chastening actually experience. And what have I mean, I've learned so much about myself actually during that period. But yeah, so they would be the low points, the things that we couldn't control, and then the things that we could control. And and then having the strength to think, right, okay, well, I can live. I don't want to live my life to be defined by the negatives, much as the positives as well. You've got to. Life is very much a balance. So from that, I've been able to be involved in Studio Alliance and now take that on, which I'm sure we'll touch on in a minute. But so the low points were there, but they've helped create resilience and also given me a segue into new experiences which I wouldn't have. I think the high points, I think one day when we were on a big growth trajectory, we used to take the company away for Barcelona or wherever, fantastic
Benidorm.
trips.
Not back to Benidorm.
Never went back to Benidorm. Our first overseas trip was to Lisbon, and I remember I stood up in front of the whole company who'd all flown out to Lisbon that morning. And that was a pinch me moment. That was a business which we'd started literally in my living room, and gone into a very small office, and I'm stood there in a very nice hotel talking to people about some amazing sales figures. At that point, we'd just gone north of £100 million.
Huge
and
company.
when it is only a number, but it's a bloody big number.
Yeah.
And when you see that your sales figures are north of 100 million and you're profitable, that was a real awakening there. Thinking we are a big business. I was fortunate enough to be voted London Director of the Year by the IOD, which was not something which I ever was expecting, but that was very humbling. But two other events really happened. One was we won the BCO Office of the Year for a fantastic project that we did in Bristol. When you're stood there collecting awards that really come from the industry, where Design and Build at the time hadn't really won many awards with the BCO. We were one of the second or third business to do so at the time. That was very humbling. That kind of showed that we've done some good work, some real high quality work that had positively affected a lot of people. And then my most humbling time was we decided that we needed to adopt a charity. We wanted to, but we didn't know what we wanted to do. And James and I, we kind of ran that kind of venture, and we looked around, and we had the London office and we had the Egham office, and we decided we'd nominate a charity that would touch everybody equally, and we selected Shooting Star Chase for Children's Hospice, and before we formally announced, we went and met with some of the guys there, but we also then had a tour of Children's Hospice, and at the time I had a very young son. And when you go to a hospice and you see what goes on there, I mean, it is incredible. Yeah. And the work these people do is absolutely life-changing.
It really is, yeah.
I mean, and I say this now, it is without doubt the most humbling experience of my life to go around that hospice to see what those young children, but also the siblings, the family, the grandparents go through. And the nurses are just amazing. And we decided at that point that we would adopt that charity, and Fourfront still today is supporting Shooting Stars. I don't know how much we've raised, but it's north of £500,000, something like that. And as a result of that, going back in time, I was invited to number 10 Downing Street, and also to Buckingham Palace, as a result of the work that we've done, the positive work that we've done for Shooting Stars. So for me, for somebody who left school at 15, to then be taken into number 10, meet Samantha Cameron, who was Prime Minister's wife at the time, and then to go to meet Duchess of Wessex in Buckingham Palace, they're kind of their life moments, and you do think actually, you weigh up what you've done. That came as a result of having an office, workplace business, fortunate enough to be able to work with a charity, support a charity, but then raise a lot of money for that charity, which has positively impacted so many more people than you could ever imagine. So,
isn't it interesting that you've had such an illustrious career in the industry, and you've built a group of companies that have turned over and profited £100 million, not profited 100, but turned over £100 million. But one of your highest is the fact that not just what you received, it's actually what you gave back off the money. Something to be said about that for sure. So that career area is at Fourfront Group, I should call it now as such. Magnificent, to be honest with you. Like, to be able to grow a company and build a team, you should give yourself a bit more credit.
Thank you.
To be honest with you, really is impressive. And then obviously that came to an end in its Studio Alliance that you're now the CEO of.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a bit that we've kind of not really touched on. So going back into, well, post-Brexit, I mean, Brexit was another big event for Europe, but certainly for the UK was a big thing. When the vote came through that we were leaving Europe, I think that most people in business were surprised. I think I think that's probably an understatement. And we thought, right, how's this going to affect us? And one of the thoughts that we had was, okay, if we're working with clients, let's just say in London, but it's the UK, and we're doing projects for them, and now we're being kicked out, or we've left Europe. Yeah. Will our clients then need to have an office in Europe? We kind of didn't really know what it meant, but we thought there's a reasonable chance that they will. Something's going to happen. So we decided that we would start Area Europe. Going back, I'm sorry, just unpicking a little bit there, kind of. We'd already decided, as our industry had changed, design and build and traditional had blurred lines. Detail and build had become very popular procurement route. And we were seeing that Cube were getting opportunities that Area Squared were getting, Area Squared were getting opportunities that Cube were getting. It was just getting very blurry. And so we decided that we would merge Cube and Area Squared together and create Area. So we dropped the Squared, we dropped the name Cube, and we would concentrate less on traditional contracting. We'd focus on detail and build and design and build. So still be very strong and focus on the whole of the UK, because the market was definitely more of a UK market than just a London or regional centric market. So when Brexit then happened, we thought, right, there's got to be opportunities in Europe. So we decided that we would launch Area Europe, but before that, we needed to find supply chain in Europe. And to support the UK clients, the best way for us would be to find like-minded businesses. So one of the roles that I then took on, we'd already decided that Gary was going to be promoted from Area Squared. He would then be running the new Area business, so Cube and Area Squared together. And it really just made sense at that point then to bring everything under Gary's control, because when you have just Sketch and 360, which in financial terms were smaller than the other guys, the plan was to bring Gary through and take over as the CEO. Yep. So that was absolutely what the plan was, and since he's taken on that role, just done an amazing job and has just done a brilliant job working with lots of great people in that business. So my role was to then start Area Europe and see how could we go into Europe. And so I looked at supply chain being absolutely critical, and thought, right, which countries are we most likely to go to if our UK clients, and just do the maths and see, well, what are the top 10 cities in Europe that they're likely to be the places where the guys in the UK are going to open. So I went out into these countries, met loads of amazing businesses, and that was my first real experience of working overseas. Yeah. And I think I went out to Europe thinking UK knows best, and as of today, coming back into the UK regularly, I know that's not the case. It absolutely isn't the case. The UK knows the best at lots of things, but there's countries in Europe and people in Europe who absolutely are doing incredible work, and I feel I've learned so much from that. So we went out as Area Europe, and Area Europe then became established, and new management team came in and have run that team incredibly well, supporting Area's UK clients in Europe, with some great partners who we'd found overseas. So we met together a few times, and everybody kind of got this sense that actually, if we did something together, rather than just be random people that may or may not work with Area Europe, may or may not know each other, let's actually bring something together. And so everybody in the room, we got everyone together in Amsterdam at the end of 1999, realised that there was a real gap in the market for a true strategic alliance of workplace experts. We're no longer interiors companies, we're workplace experts. The kind of whole workplace consultancy world has changed how our industry is. And you have a lot of the big corporate real estate businesses who are doing fit out in some countries, not in others. But the end user client may well want continuity in these countries where they may want this transfer of trust. The real estate project managers, who are now very happy to recommend design and build, may not have supply chain sorted in some of the other countries. So we've thought actually there's an opportunity here to create something. And what we didn't want to be is a team where everybody is the same. That very deliberately, the entrepreneurial spirit that started all of these companies all around Europe, we wanted to harness that, maintain it and improve it. So they all talk together, they learn a lot from each other, but they also offer something very unique for clients who are looking at projects around Europe. So over the last 5 years, I've been very instrumental in creating that. And then end of last year, I took on the role of CEO of Studio Alliance.
Yep.
And my day now is very much focused on kind of harnessing this European power and offering something unique in that.
And how do you think that Studio Alliance is gonna change the workplace as such? Because having strategic partnerships around Europe, I haven't really heard anyone do that, to be honest with you. So it's kind of unique as such. So how do you think that's going to change the design and build industry as well in the UK?
I mean, I don't know if it's going to change the design and build industry because I think the UK design and build market is very strong. I mean, there is 10 or 15 at least excellent design and build companies out there. Not many of those companies want to or are capable of working in Europe. So some can, some can't. So the clients who are working with those businesses, if they have a project in Europe and they want some continuity, how are they going to do that? Well, they can't. Whereas Studio Alliance can at least provide a level of continuity for clients, in so much as transfer of knowledge, transfer of trust, in some respects can be a transfer of people, can work for different parts of that organisation. But I don't see it as really changing procurement in the UK. I think that's very different. But what we are seeing is, you're right, nobody else does it. The fact that I'm contacted by UK businesses regularly wanting to be part of it, by businesses in other countries wanting to be part of it, clients now becoming more and more interested in it. I was at MIPIM last week, and terrible weather, by the way, but yeah, very interesting. And when people understand what Studio Alliance can be for them, they're interested. So it's collectively now. The collective turnover of our members is north of €1 billion.
Wow.
So we have 18 members in 18 different countries. Very deliberately, we're not going to have a second or third UK member. We're sticking with one member, one country, because
I was going to ask that actually.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the key kind of cornerstones. We don't want competition between the members. So if our German member has a great idea that they want to share with the team, but there's another German member in there, they're not going to share that idea because they'll be giving knowledge to their competitor, and obviously that applies to any country in Europe. So we're very much about one country, one member. We want each member to be classed as a leader in their respective country. So it's very difficult to define leader, but certainly a leading company in their own country. And we have members now that range from €400 million turnover to very modest, because we have Luxembourg, Malta as two of our smaller members. The economies there are very small in terms of comparative to, say, UK, France and Germany, but each of those members is bringing something new, something positive. We're all learning from one another.
It's an interesting concept, it really is. And like I said earlier, repeat myself, but I haven't ever heard of that before, so I'm sure it will succeed.
Well, I hope so.
Well, with your illustrious bloody repertoire as such, I'm sure it will. Clive, what about sort of like just future plans for yourself? So like we've dived into a load in terms of the business and whatnot, and I'm sure you've got plans for Studio Alliance going forward. What about just plans for yourself going forward?
I think for me personally, I think so many of decisions have been based on growth for 20 or 25, 30 years of my career. Started off with bouncing around a little bit, but then 6 years in one place, 2, and then 25 odd years. So there's been very solid foundations now. I've learned so much, and I have to say, Studio Alliance has reawakened my kind of learning juices. What I've gained from the guys across Europe has been amazing, and what I like to do is impart that knowledge. So when running a business, working with the guys in a business, but working with some smaller businesses, I kind of do a little bit of work with a couple of businesses, just helping them. They're on a growth trajectories. I'm working with them, neither of which are in the workplace industry. So I like the fact that the skills that I've learned are now transferable into different industries. I like doing that. It's never going to be something that I do for financial reasons, because the businesses I'm supporting are not the sort of business that's going to be able to pay that, but it actually gives me a lot of satisfaction. So I see that something that I'm going to do more of. I think Studio Alliance has got a long way to go. I think there's so much more we can do with the Alliance. I think that we're now starting to get global connections. That's somewhere where we can go. I think it'd be a slightly different model, but I think that's something which is definitely achievable. My daughter is 14 in a couple of days' time, so we've got 4 more years at least where she's in full-time education. I kind of feel that kind of grounds you in terms of what you're going to do. So I don't see any kind of slowing up, definitely not for the next 4 years. And then I think if there was a situation where children are off at university, then you may have a different sort of outlook on life. I want to get my golf handicap down. I want to travel more. I want to have a place overseas where I can spend dedicated time, not just holiday time. But yeah, I mean, I think that just not doing one thing, I think that's important. I think my grandfather, he retired at 80, and I think that the idea of retiring doesn't appeal. I want to keep working, but I don't want to work 5 days a week, 12-hour days. I want to be able to use the knowledge and be smart. So I think
that's well, from what I understand, that's the same with a lot of entrepreneurs as they get older. They don't want to just stop working, no. Because then they're not doing it just for, they haven't built businesses and they haven't cultivated teams and whatnot just to stop. Like they find it impossible almost to stop. Yeah. So it doesn't surprise me.
I think what good can come of just watching daytime TV? I mean, it's crazy.
Surely the brain rots out. Not literally. I think so. It's probably a bit of a ruthless terminology.
Well, I think it does. I absolutely think it does. I think it's well known that your brain is your most important muscle, and if you're not exercising it, it's going to get flabby, and it's not going to work as well. And I feel so fortunate that in my career I've worked with a lot of young people. And they teach you so much, and it's now at the moment we have AI in the world, and I'm intrigued by it, and I know virtually nothing about it, but I'm saying to my son, but I've also I'm booking myself on training course now because I want to learn more about it, because I think it's so important to know. So I think staying relevant, being able to have those conversations with your children or younger people in the workplace, you've got to be able to communicate with them on their level. And there is no point in saying, well, when I did it, it was this way. Then no one cares. I mean, honestly, no one cares what it was like to cost a job 30 years ago. But I used to say I had a scale rule and do it this way. No one cares. We have pre-con who do that now. Why do we care?
It's interesting you say that. As ruthless as it is, no one does care.
They don't. They don't.
They just care about the now and what it's going to be like, and
absolutely,
and going forward.
And I get that, because actually, when I started my career, I didn't really care how people did it in my parents' generation. It didn't really matter.
I'm glad you've said it.
Yeah, but it's true, isn't it?
No, it is true.
And we have I mean, we have social media, and how do you kind of embrace that in a positive way going forward as you get into your 50s, 60s, 70s? That's a challenge. You can't just go, I don't do social media.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah, because
it's like saying I don't use the telephone when you no, I only like to write a letter. Going back previous generations, it's crazy.
That's probably where you, and I'm sure you would anyway, but that's probably where you'll succeed going forward, because you're happy to integrate with the new way of working and the new way of things.
Yeah, or finding the way that is relevant to you.
Yeah,
I'm not going to be using TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram like my kids will.
Yeah,
but I've got to find a way of being able to understand how they use it, why they use it, what's the safe way to use it, and what is my relevant way for my generation.
Interesting. Clive, it's been an experience, to say the least, sitting down and chatting to you. You've had such an illustrious career. You've built huge businesses, groups of companies, and what you're doing now, Studio Alliance, sounds really promising and unique. So thank you so much for your time. Thanks for sharing your story and being open and honest about like all the highs and the lows, because like you said earlier, there's highs and lows, and not just of businessmen but of everyday person. So I hope people can relate to that as well. So thank you so much for your time today.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks, Clive.
Thanks, Callum. Cheers.